Welcome back, everyone, to the next episode. And today we're lucky to be joined by a serial entrepreneur, or an audio entrepreneur as he calls himself. He's launched over 165 podcasts worldwide. That is James Burtt, who's He's a nice, humble guy, as you can tell. But welcome, James. First of all, thank you for joining us on the podcast today, our first guest. So we're very excited. Luke,
pleasure to have you, mate.
Luke bigged you up on a previous episode. So, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you currently are doing?
Well, I'd like to actually put that question across to my full-time now PR manager, Luke, because he does a better rendition of me. So my name's James Burtt. I've launched a lot of podcasts. That's kind of why we're all sat in this lovely room now. Yeah. It all looks sort of sunny and rosy at the end of the journey, but it took an interesting spin to get here. I know you were laughing at the questions you were asked me in advance, especially when I got sacked off the radio. I was a former radio presenter. That didn't work out so well. Maybe we'll dive into that. And then I did some other stuff in the world of broadcast, property investment. I got involved in a coaching business, went from a standing start to £1 million in 18 months, where I worked with two gangsters. That was interesting. And then I started launching some podcasts and launched the first one. Having no mailing list, no profile, no marketing. And I wanted to see if you could do it, because everyone's like, anyone can launch podcasts. I was like, well, can you? Because everyone at the time, it was only the big celebrities that were doing this. This is 2017. So the day that I launched, Tim Ferriss from the 4-Hour Body, 4-Hour Work Week fame was number one. Gary Vee was number 3, and I was sat in between them at number 2, like Billy No Mates. And everyone was like, who is this geezer? And that was it. And then I was off to the races, really. And that's the fast forward to now. We've done 165 podcast launches.
What are we? 166?
You will be, by the time this goes live, you'll be...
It's got too many clients.
168.
You're definitely my favourite.
Yeah.
That's
the 168th time you said that.
Yeah. So, James, I know you've worked with some huge names such as Grant Cardone, Stephen Bartlett as well, I believe. What was kind of your build-up to where you are now?
So it was failed my way to success. You know, everyone says, fail your way, fail forward and fail fast and all that kind of stuff. That at the time you're failing, like, this is shit. Like, I don't want to fail. I just want to do well. But that was the reality of it. So I got my start in, if I rewind, 2006, I decided I needed a proper job. Prior to that, I'd been like a holiday rep, and I'd had the time of my flipping life with my liver and my kidneys.
Gonna have to interrupt you there, yeah.
Okay.
The worst holiday rep in the world, apparently.
According to the Saturday Telegraph. They might have had a point to be fair.
What did it say? Why did they say you were so shit?
There's something that happened in one of the hotels, and like somebody could have died, and apparently I didn't care.
1 second. You got to tell us more about that story.
Anyway, the reason why I went to the press is because there was a lawyer who was staying in the hotel at the time, and this whole situation has kicked off. There's like an injury that's happened, and you're like 19, hung over to shit, trying to deal with all these life-changing situations, and this guy came over and tried to give it really Charlie Big Spuds, really trying to calm the situation down. The hotel's like trying to kick off everybody, and this guy flicked his business card, literally put it between smarmy motherfucker, flicked his business card at me and went, I'm a lawyer. I went, I don't give a fuck, and give it him back in front of everybody, and that was kind of it. And then it just went off.
How long were you holiday repping for?
So I was still stayed on after that point.
It's a job, even though you're the worst holiday rep in the world.
Good for rapport, apparently. So I had 5 final written warnings in my first year. I just didn't get out. I just had too much fun. I just went out. I got drunk every night.
As you're meant to.
As you're meant to.
Where was you doing this?
In the island of Menorca. So it was like this little sleepy little island. I was like, I can't get myself into too much trouble over there, surely.
You work out.
Oh, you can. You can get yourself into trouble everywhere. So that's what I started doing. Then I was a holiday entertainer. And when I came back, I was then in a like a touring band. We thought we were going to be famous. We did X Factor and all that stuff. Yeah. That didn't work out either.
How far did you get?
Boot camp. Judges' houses. Went to judges' houses.
Oh wow! Whose house did you go to?
So it was the year when everyone went together. So we went to a big mansion out in Oxford. So it was Danny.
So you didn't even get to go to LA or nothing.
No. They shoved us all in Oxford. I was like, I lived in Buckinghamshire, like 40 minutes down the M40. Like, this is a right mug off. Yeah, so it was that year. So I'd done that, and then I was like, I want to get a proper job. So I went into what was called broadcast PR. I didn't know what it was. I just went along, and it just so happened if you were all right at selling, you kind of done all right sort of thing. So very, very quickly, you know that whole analogy of be the dumbest person in the room and you're in the right room? I was definitely the right person in the right room, because I was seriously underqualified. I was 24 years old, and I was sort of involved in running campaigns for BMW, Thomas Cook, Nissan, Taylor's of Harrogate Coffee, like all just like mad brand, Nintendo, Xbox, and I worked with all these massive brands. But I fell in love with the radio, and I was like, I don't want to be the guy doing the PR campaigns on the radio. I want to be the guy the other side of the microphone, and absolutely fell in love with it. And then there was a new music station that popped up, and they were looking for presenters, and I just threw my hat in the ring. I met this guy for a beer, and he's like, yeah, I think you're a nice guy, let's go for it. And that's literally
don't need a qualification, do you, to be a radio presenter, I suppose?
No, 100%. Like back in those days, and this is what's really interesting, because I actually got asked recently to go back onto mainstream media. And I'm just not interested to do it now. You just don't need to these days, because a podcast gives me the same thrill as what a radio show used to do, but I control the narrative. I can completely make the content that I want to make that adds value to my brand. When you work on radio, you've got to play the right song at the right time and stop for the adverts and all that kind of nonsense. But anyway, so I had my first radio gig, and then they brought in the ex-head of Radio 1, a very famous guy called Trevor the Hatchet Dan, and the Hatchet because he just sacks everybody. So true to form, he came to this radio station and he said, we're going to make some sweeping changes here. And I was like, oh, brilliant. And then he phoned me the next day. He said, James, it's Trevor. I was like, hi, Trevor, how are you? He said, I'm doing better than you're going to be doing in about 3 minutes.
He's done that before, hasn't he?
Yeah, not his first rodeo.
He's practiced that one.
And he said, do you remember those sweeping changes I was talking about yesterday? I said, yeah. He said, well, the first sweeping change, I'm sacking you and your mate. He said, I just think you're terrible. He went, honestly, absolutely awful.
Mate, that's his honesty, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
It was very direct.
His
right?
love language was honesty, and mine was, like, make me feel a bit better, Trevor. But I was also involved at the station as I was heading up their new music team. So we actually created a music offering where we'd go and put music into stores. So long story short, if you play music in public, you have to pay a license fee called PRS or PPL. And we worked out that because we're a new music station with predominantly unsigned musicians, we had a catalogue of 50,000 tracks that were license free and weren't shit. Because back in those days, this is like 12, 13 years ago now. Back in those days, the only unsigned music was like panpipes, jazz, or like renditions of the Beatles that were done like really badly. And we're like, we've actually got good music here. So we started, making a lot of money selling this music into stores. So
selling content pretty much.
Yeah.
Like these days, how people sell content, it's the same.
And I know that you guys talked about the power of mentorship in one of your previous episodes and stuff, but I ended up working, the guy who owned the station was the first ever junior apprentice for the whole BBC. I can't remember what it's called, the Director General. It was the first ever apprentice for that job. So he was massive at the BBC. The guy who was in charge of tech was the former CTO at the BBC. And there was me in this room. So I just like found myself, whether it's luck or whether it's the universe or whatever you want to believe in, I just end up being in these right rooms. So anyway, Trevor couldn't fully sack me from the radio because I was valuable to them. But I was, the station was based in Newcastle. I was living in London. And the only upside of it was that every 2 weeks I'd go up to Newcastle on the train, get to pre-record these radio shows, get to pretend I was famous for 15 minutes. And that was kind of it. The rest of the time was very unglamorous. So I was sat in a 2-bed flat in South London. Shout out to the Bromley crew. And I was just making cold calls to like 99p stores about saving money on their music, which was about as fun as you can imagine. Yeah. So that was kind of it. So I've sort of stopped doing that. And then I got involved in sort of selling broadcasting. I kind of lost my love for radio. And I don't know if you guys have ever had this. If something doesn't go your way, I kind of decided that I hated everything about it. Yeah. Oh, radio shit. Oh, the radio industry shit. But it was just one person and his dislike. If I hadn't have thrown the baby out with the bathwater or whatever that analogy is, then I could have maybe gone and worked at a different station and sort of toned my craft and relearned what I needed to know. But yeah, that was kind of it. And then I did some property investment and I just sort of fumbled my way from thing to thing. My main metric being, if it's not fun, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. So along the way, while she was chopping and changing, like, how did you feel at the time? Did you feel a little bit lost and you felt like you weren't heading in a good direction? Or at the time, was you just satisfied and kind of just happened? Or?
No, I hated it. Yeah. I genuinely hated it.
And did you have an end goal? Did you know where you wanted to get or what you wanted to do? So?
No, and this is what I think was probably part of the problem. So when I was at work at the radio station, as I say, I was working up in the station was based in Newcastle. I was down in southeast London and I wouldn't really have anything to do with the team. My wife was working at the time in artist management. She was an artist manager. So she'd leave the house at 7 a.m, get back at 7 o'clock at night. Yeah. So I'd sit in the house all day for 12 hours by myself. The only people that I'd speak to are people that I was cold calling on the phone about
Yeah.
Like unlicensed music.
I don't want to buy your music, but
they
please
don't
just have a
wanna
conversation
that chat
anyway.
with you. Then at the same time, my dad passed away, and then I found myself in this right hole. I was like massively grieving. But the day my dad died, I went out for a run to clear my head. Ended up snapping my ankle, so I ended up back in A&E 6 hours later, the same hospital he died in. I was back getting my ankle fixed up, and they were like, "What are you doing back here?" I was like, "Oh, don't worry, I don't think he's resurrected. Like, can you fix me now? You failed earlier on today, but can you give me a go now?" And so I've got this bust ankle. I'm at home on my own. I've lost my dad. I've got this job that I don't like, so I actually left that job in the December. My dad passed away in the October. In December, I was like, "Look, I've just got to not do this," because
a new start,
fresh start. I don't know if you've ever had that thing. Well, unfortunately, everyone's going to go through it at some point. Touch wood, it happens as infrequently as possible. But there's certain moments in your life, and you question everything.
Yeah,
you have them sort of like big come to Jesus moments, like, "What is life all about, man?
Yeah.
Life is so short." And he wouldn't want me to be living in a flat in South London. Like he didn't care, frankly. But I was like, I've got to go and do something different. But the only issue that I was so unsure of what I was doing, that I was like, well, what do I do now? So I got rid of the job. So now I've got no job, and I'm still depressed, and I've got a bust ankle. And I would literally, and I knew that this was when I had to do something different. I'd work, and I had a really rigid work routine. This was before like home working or hybrid working was like a thing. So I'm in this 2-bedroom flat, and one of the bedrooms I've turned into an office. And that's a grandiose title for having a laptop on the corner with some like built-in furniture. Yeah. And I'd work all day. I'd go in there at 9 o'clock. Because I was really rigid, like that's how people work. You work 9 to 5. That's how you make stuff happen. And I get to lunchtime, and because I was like by myself, I didn't have anyone to chat to. Then this like wave of grief, I don't know why, every lunchtime it just hit me. And I've got this bust ankle, so I can't stand up. So I used to find myself for an hour at lunch break. I just sit on the kitchen floor and cry.
Yeah.
For 2 months, every lunchtime I just cry for an hour. Then I go back and start fucking phoning 9
That's your lunch break.
I was just like,
get told to fuck off again.
Yeah, exactly. It was rough, and I was like, but I think part of the worst part of all of that, as well as the grief and all that kind of stuff, was actually I didn't know what direction I wanted to go in. I had no idea.
When did it change?
It took a long while.
A light bulb moment, or just
it
a
wasn't.
gradual
I'd like to say that it was, but
things fell in place.
It was just, I got to a point where I was like, I have to, because I was kind of like waiting for the next big radio gig. Yeah. I was like, if I just hold out long enough, then this is going to come along. And I was like, enough bad shit's happened to me recently. Like, lost the job, bust my ankle, lost my dad. Shit, things happen in threes. Like,
surely something's about to change.
I've read The Secret.
Yeah.
Come on, Rhonda Byrne. I've read The Magic.
Yeah.
How long ago was it you went through this transitional process within your life?
2010, that was. Yeah, back in 2010. So a long time ago. Yeah, a long time ago now. But yeah, then I realised I've been out for job interviews, and so I was like going on crutches down to the train station. I was like, this is not like the dream that I had when I left the job. No. And it got to a point where a job came up that wasn't perfect, but it still kept me moving in the right direction. I think that's one of the things that hopefully the listeners, if they're in a similar situation where they're not exactly where they want to be, just take what you think is an incremental step in the right direction. Yeah. So this was doing sales again in radio, but for a little network. So I basically put the sports and business bulletins onto 160 radio stations, and I would sell the ad space on it, which wasn't really what I wanted to do. But number one, it got me out of the house. Number two, it got me in an environment where I couldn't just sit and cry every lunchtime because everyone would be like, this kid is really weird. And I was just like, it would just be good for my mental health before mental health was a thing. But it actually turned out to be really good, because that then, every step you take opens up an opportunity for something 100%. Bigger and better. So
100%. I'm just thinking about how poor your sales must have been, or how, because being with your headspace, like what was going on? Like, were you doing poor at the job? Or were you managing to pull yourself up in the afternoon and crack on with the sales?
Yeah, I was doing all right with it. But the best thing was, because it was a new thing, there was no metric of what success looked like. So no one had an idea of like what the ideal time turnaround for a client was. I was like, oh yeah, this is it's a long tail with these clients. Because you could have probably closed it on the same day, but because no one had done it before, I kind of had wiggle room. It wasn't like there was a process to follow. We were making it up as we were going along.
I think cold calling in general as well. I know me and Jake, we come from the environment 10 years ago. We were making like 300 calls a day, and it freaking sucks. It's so boring. You get told no more times in one day than you probably do in your whole life.
It's crazy,
you've got to be thick-skinned for it. Like how long were you bashing the phones for, doing cold calls, until you went into other areas?
Oh, that was not for very long. That was probably 6 months of doing that, but I'd done sales before, and sales didn't bother me. Like when I worked back in the radio PR days, that was literally cold calling big brands and trying to speak to decision makers who have got control of like PR campaigns and marketing budgets. So I was used to doing that kind of stuff anyway. So it wasn't consciously that didn't affect me, or I didn't think so. But actually thinking back at it now, like in the sort of the fragile state that you're in, and then for 8 hours a day being told no. And
you're on your own as well. That's what I think. Like, it's not even like someone's there like motivating you, like, come on. Because like, if our sales guy's having a bad day, you can see and you can pump him up. But you've just
that
got
must have
yourself.
been real tough,
like,
actually. I couldn't imagine when we were cold calling, just being in a room by yourself. Like, I think in sales, it's really important that you have a synergy of a sales floor to kind of pick you up a little bit. So yeah, that must have been real tough.
And you can't even sit down, whereas like it's good to walk around when you're selling, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you don't have a choice, you're just laying there.
Yeah.
Cold calling.
Even at the
Crying on the floor.
back in those days, it was to get good like Wi-Fi, you had to have a cable.
Dial up.
Yeah, so it wasn't dial. I'm not that fucking old man. But no, we had an Ethernet cable out of the box, so I could only go within like 3 meters of the box as well. So I was like chained to the box all day, every day. So at one point, I realised how bad I was getting, because the little spare room that I was in was like quite a dark room. I was like, this is dark for my thoughts, and like figuratively and literally, this is dark. So I was like, I'm going to go and sit on the dining room table. But it's so weird because I'd hardwired myself to work in the spare room. Yeah, that was my office. So I just couldn't get going with it. I couldn't get going. I was like, I'd have like Trisha on in the background. I was like, oh, I'm having a lovely little time, watch the TV in the background, but super inefficient. But again, to sort of bring it back to a point that your listeners can understand, that first radio job that got me out of the spare bedroom effectively wasn't the perfect dream job, but it was the next thing to get me moving. I think sometimes momentum, it's easier to get something, keep something going once you've got a bit of momentum. To get stuff started, you guys all know you've got your own businesses. When you get it started, fucking, it's like pushing Tree Club a hill. Once it's moving, might not be moving very fast to start with, but at least you got a little bit of momentum to keep pushing this thing forwards.
Yeah, it's the same with a lot of people. Always ask me that they want to start a side hustle or whatever. If it's your first side hustle, you've already got a secure job, and they're like, oh, I want to start something, but I just don't know what. And you can give them ideas like, maybe not that, this and that. I'm like, just start anything. Like, just start.
It doesn't matter if you start selling washing machines.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Or whatever.
Like, just
You'll
start selling anything. Don't worry about the money for the first 6. Don't even worry about the money, but at least for the first 6 months, don't worry about the money. And just start. Just, you're going to learn. All right, what have I got to do? A logo, right? Who do I know to do logo? I need to go and find a designer. Then what do I need? I need to register a business. How do I do that? You don't even need that for a side hustle really to start with. But
people think they do. Yeah,
but it's just start and just head in that direction. And you learn so much. I know when I started my clothing from back when I was working full time as an electrician, I remember my goal. I think it was for the first 6 months. I didn't care about earning any money. I invested all of my money at the time, £10,000. To do that, you're talking about sort of a stepping stone. I was working overtime till like ridiculous. I was like midnight and 11 o'clock at night, every night through the week, back up at 5, 6 in the morning. £10 an hour I was on, so it was a lot of £10 an hour overtime, just trying to, and between 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock on the third day, when you're so tired, that hour is not worth £10. But if I didn't do that as a stepping stone, just labouring, tiling, I wouldn't have had £10,000 to start the business, which then allowed me to quit. But back to the point, my end goal was after 12 months, I think if I could earn another £1,000 a month, I'd be really happy. And it was a good investment of time, effort and money. 7 months later, I quit my job. I think I'd first hit 10K profit in a month, and I quit my job. And then obviously it allowed me to start the business I've got now. And literally just because of that and having the mindset where a lot of people I speak to, they're like, oh yeah, but that's not good enough. I don't want to do that. I want to earn 5K a month, 3K a month straight away, or, and it doesn't work like that. And just getting started, it's going to open up opportunities. I didn't ever imagine that after 7 months I could quit my full-time job and have earned more money.
Well, they say they don't have the time. People say they don't have the time. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and when people say yeah, exactly. When they work until like 4 or 5 and they're like, oh, I just don't have the time. I'm like, oh, you have got the time.
Some people say, like, obviously some people can't get jobs, but a lot of people say, when they don't know what to do, like, about finding a job either. it's like you can just start anything.
Yeah.
Everyone goes, oh, I don't have a job, or I don't know what to do. You have to do something. We've got like 6 things going on at once. There's so many different things to do. So
many
picking
things.
one and just
exactly.
Regarding
starting.
time as well, like if you're doing a 9 to 5 and you're saying you haven't got time, entrepreneurship probably isn't for you, because we're working like 8 in the morning till, especially Luke's sending emails at like 4 a.m. This guy, Luke, do you even sleep? Like, always online. So yeah, you've got to make time for what your dreams are, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
It's so important. So like James, with your journey after you stopped the cold calling stages, what was the next step for you when you landed the next radio gig, or was it more so going into the podcast side of things?
No, so I did the radio sort of ad sales for a little bit, and then and this is probably a world that you guys can relate to as well. I saw an advert for Rich Dad Poor Dad training, and I was like,
we all got hit with
how much was that?
1,500 quid standard.
Was it?
1,500 quid. Yeah, that's just for the one dayer. So I went to this seminar. I'd never been to anything like it in my life. You guys have probably been to these sorts of things before, like multiple strings of income and all that stuff. Yeah, run to the back of the room with your credit card. And I remember I saw the advert, and again, so I'm on this, I think it's interesting when you put it all together looking backwards. So I was on the way to this job that I didn't really want to do, but it was getting me out of the house. My ankle's sort of fixed by now, and I think it was like the summertime. So I started that job in April, so it got to about September. And the guy I was working for, I'm good pals with him now, but at the time, it was just an awful boss, but I was probably a terrible employee, because I know that you guys are big on sort of like personal accountability. Previous episode. So yeah, he was a bad boss, I was a bad employee. Maybe it was a mixture of both, probably 50-50, or maybe more in my favour, whatever. But I remember I was on the tube, and this tube would come out of the underground and go to the overground at Queen's Park, where I'd get off. Yeah. I was reading, and it almost felt like it was like, again, meant to be, whether you believe in spirit or God or the universe or manifestation or whatever. Yeah. So I'm reading the Metro newspaper that used to get free when you go on the trains in the morning. And I never picked up the train. I never picked up the newspaper ever. Yeah. So it was weird that I picked it up in the first place. I was listening to a podcast by a guy called Lewis Howes. And this is back in the day, you had to download it to your phone before, because there's no 4G. Dedication. And I was reading this newspaper, which I never pick up. And I just come at the tube station, and bright light comes along as I'm getting to Queen's Park, and the sun's all shining. And I turn the page, and it literally popped off the page to me. I was like, oh, Rich Dad Poor Dad, I'll invest in property. No money, don't worry, no money down. I'm like, hang on a second, leverage OPM, other people's money. I'm like, I'm having a bit of this, Robert Kiyosaki, sign me up. Get off the train, and I shit you not, this is God's honest truth. My mate, Dan, shout out to Dan. He won't listen to this. I don't know why. He never listens to anything. He never listens to anything that I make, so he'll never hear this. But anyway, shout out to Dan. He texts me at exactly the same time, going, "Mate, have you seen this training thing? I've picked up the newspaper this morning." I was like, "No, it's fake."
That's
Dan,
it.
we've got
to do it.
So that Saturday, so this was like a Tuesday, I think. That Saturday, off we trundle to the Connaught Rooms in Holborn. By the way, if anyone's going to go to an event at the Connaught Rooms in London, you're about to get sold some stuff, so just be warned. Again, I went into it completely green. I never knew nothing about it, and I turn up there, and there's this guy giving this presentation, and you take a property, and you buy it below market value. I'm like, BMV, yeah. Get on board. I only need 10 grand. And then I can put this in.
I mean, your own money either.
It's not even my own money, mate. And then I'm going to put it back out.
Someone.
I'm going to flip it on the back end 6 months later. I'll put a tenant in there. I'm getting free money. I'm like, everyone else who's not doing this is a mug.
Yeah.
Anyway, run to the back of the room with your credit card. Like my wife had told me it was going to happen. I was like, nah, it's not like that. Anyway, 1,500 quid later, I walk out with a bag and a fucking leaflet. That was about it. And I walked through the front door and Haynes like, what have you done? I was like, oh, no, it's not like that. I know you think it's like a pyramid scheme, but this is legit. This is, Rich Dad Poor Dad guy backs this product. I've got a picture of him next to a sign going, this training's great.
Did you have the money at the time?
Nah, put it on a credit card.
You put it on a credit card? Yeah, see, that's what I've
Standard.
heard. Yeah, it goes on.
Put it on a credit card. And that was sort of my sort of first step into property investment. And then me and my mate Dan, we went on and bought 3 properties, 3 little buy-to-lets up in Sheffield.
You still own them, or?
No, I sold them last year because we had equity in them, but the rents have stayed the same. We're getting too much in the weeds now, I appreciate. But no, so I got rid of those because there was an investor who wanted to buy them. I'd sourced a couple of properties, so I made a little bit of money doing that. And then I sort of got into this world of like property trainers. Like, well, this is really interesting. And then I had a property management company, so we managed about 20 million quid worth of property. We had 93 tenants across 21 houses. We did rent to rent and sort of managed multiple like HMOs. That was kind of our speciality. We had like a 70 grand a month rent roll and fucking hated it. It was just, honestly, it was just
these boys can relate to that. They all do Yeah.
Touching on your rent-to-rent experience, like how would you, other than being a headache, how would you explain the business model in terms of profitability from your point of view? Like what was your overall experience with the property rent-to-rent stuff?
It's really interesting because so often you will find that you just about, and I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, you just about make enough money to kind of live on. Like at the time, at one point I needed, this is before I had kids in a house and all this sort of stuff. I needed like $3,000 a month, and I just about managed to get $3,000 a month. Then I needed 4, and I just about got to 4. Then I got to 5, and just about got to 5. Every level, you kind of reach that just about sort of stage, and we'd have like one holiday a year. We weren't like, licking dustbin lids to eat sort of thing, but we weren't like flush, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But rent to rent, the concept of it is sound. What wasn't sound was our business knowledge. If I look back at that business now, it would have been so easy to scale it up, but you don't know what you don't know to start with.
Exactly.
I know in the first episode you guys talked about like the power of mentorship, and it's so powerful. I think it's brilliant that you guys have got each other. But I know that you mentioned, Luke, that you go to the pub and talk to some of your other pals and they're like glazed over. They're pleased that you're happy about it, but they're like, mate, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they have a clue, yeah.
And that's, we were kind of in that situation. Me and my wife were doing it together. She did all of the sort of the back end paperwork stuff. I dealt with all the tenants. I was a guy opening doors for people who've got locked out at midnight and, turfed someone out who hadn't paid his rent and gone to court and all this stuff. Like I've been there, done it, cleaned up rooms when someone's moving out, someone else is moving in and they leave their drug paraphernalia.
Was it HMOs?
Yeah, it was all HMOs.
So then you imagine so many properties and then so many tenants inside the properties as well. So it's a lot to deal with.
This is how stupid we were. We had everyone on because we thought brilliant customer care. Everyone could get in touch with WhatsApp group.
Kicking off.
So at one point, me and my wife are in Australia. We're about to go on a yacht in the Whit Sundays. I know I made it out like we weren't doing very well.
You're looking millions of millions. Jesus.
6-year origin story.
Lids, but he was on the yacht.
Nice lids. My pal, it was his birthday, so he'd hired this yacht thing on Whit Sundays in Australia. We were there to see my Aussie side of the family. And there was this one day in particular where the day before we got on the boat, and we had like 136 texts back and forth in all these WhatsApp groups. And I was just like, this is just shit. Like,
you have no employees?
No, we all did it ourselves.
Just doing it by yourself. So when you went away, the business came with you, I suppose.
So we had a business partner. He'd invested a little bit of dough to get a couple up and running.
So it was silent.
Silent partner. So he said, because he was a really good mate, a lovely fella, to be fair. Again, going back to the power of being around the right people. He's like, look, you guys go away. I'll manage the properties, have a nice time. But he just couldn't.
I'm not coming back, mate.
Sort of thing. Yeah, see you later. But again, looking at it now, it'd be so easy to put a member of staff in. It'd been so easy to get someone doing. I was, you were saying about doing the overtime. I remember I was the guy sat with the plumber when a pipe burst in a HMO at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. My best mates emigrated to America for 4 years and I missed their leaving dinner because I sat and watched a plumber who didn't know what the fuck he was doing, plumbing in a radiator. And I was like, this was not what I wanted.
Problem is when you're dealing with like service accommodation or HMOs is that anything can happen at any time. It's literally anything can happen at any time. Last week, we had no water in one of our apartments, right? So guest is calling us like, I've got no water. And then another guest in the same building saying the same thing. Then another guest, the whole building is obviously not working. So this is at 9 p.m. at night. So I'm calling our landlord, like, can you sort it out? She just stopped blanking me. Then I'm calling the emergency line, nothing's happening. So 7 o'clock in the morning, they still got no water and obviously moaning about it. Finally get hold of the landlord. They get someone around there, they turn it on, but by the time the guest has left, and then an hour later, we're getting a call from our tenant underneath, 2 floors underneath it saying there's water coming through our ceiling. And we're like, oh my God. So they've gone up to the top floor, which is our other apartment, and where the guest has turned the tap on, and left it on because there was no water, full flowing coming out, and it's gone through that an Airbnb, an Airbnb in between us that's not ours, then our property, and then gone into a restaurant underneath, and then later that day 2 other apartments are like, we've got water coming through our ceiling as well.
They're on like a different part of the building.
The scale of it was so bad that all of the electric stopped working on like 4 floors down. It was crazy. And the maddest thing is when the cleaner actually found the flood, so the water's pouring into the basin of the sink. I swear to God, it was like the rubber dinghy rapids, right? Water's just flowing. I'm like, but the cleaner's just recording it. I'm like, why are you turning the tap off?
Literally.
What's happening with that? Are you going through insurance?
Luckily, we actually had someone dealing with it at times. We had one of our staff members, she was kind of dealing with it. Luckily, like, we were all trying to work, but we're kind of seeing it. We are kind of having to get.
That's our side hustle. That's not our main jobs or our main companies.
The thing
That's
with
something
side
doing on the
hustles,
side.
going back to the side hustle thing that you talked about a minute ago, I think it's important. You've got to treat it like a business.
Yeah.
To get up and running, if you're doing FBA by Amazon, you get some stuff in, you spend a couple of £100, you work out the lumps and bumps, you find out if it's something that you want to do. Because I've been through the FBA thing. At one point I was selling $1,000 worth of baby bath mats every day. I've been there, done it and got the t-shirt.
Yeah.
Which gives you good experience. But again, all of the stuff that kind of didn't really work, again, if I look at it now, at the time, I'm like, oh, Jeff Bezos is taking more of a cut, and the fees from landing it from China are really expensive, and it got held up at shipping and blah 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 blah. But actually, I wasn't treating it serious like it was a proper business, and neither was anyone else that I was involved in it with. So I think having a side hustle's fine, especially when you've got assets like with rent to rent, service accommodation. When you're responsible for other stuff, you have to weigh up that responsibility versus benefit of
and don't think it's going to be passive. Everyone thinks it's going to be passive. This passive is absolutely.
We've employed
ridiculous.
someone to make it even more passive now, but they're not going to deal with the water coming through the ceiling. They're going to be calling us and telling us what's happening, and we've had to deal with the whole big problem of what's happened.
This is
a good model. It can be a really good model. I've got mates who've got thousands of units of service accommodation, and they've absolutely killed it off. They've done brilliant, but again, they treat it like a business. They've got a team
systems
of
and
15,
processes,
people,
really, isn't it?
Systems,
Yeah.
processes. They've got managers. If something happens, they've got insurances. They've got their own, like the water situation. They've had one of their team out within a couple of hours because that's how they treat it. But when you get started, you kind of got
we got a mentor to start. And now we're at a stage where we've done what that training course told us.
Yeah.
Now we're at the next stage, but where it's our side hustle, maybe we are neglecting it.
Oh, 100% we're neglecting it. So I think if one of us was full time with it, which is completely impossible, it would do so well.
Yeah.
We just lack time.
So out of interest, why are you guys looking at side hustles when you've got your own thing? Why are you not doubling down on your focus with the things you're doing?
That's a great question,
During COVID, really.
We went at COVID, and we had lots of spare time. Obviously, we're doing marketing, and no one wanted to do any marketing, because they didn't know when the business was going to open. Then Jake, no one's booking holidays to go anywhere, and then we were like, so we had some time, and it was kind of coming out of COVID. So we're like, cool, Airbnbs are going to smash because no one can go on holiday. And for Jake, it was kind of leverage.
Leverage both ways. If someone goes abroad, I win. If someone stays staycation, I win.
So we got two, and it was pretty. It's not passive, but actually we automated it from the start. We got so many systems in process in place from the start. It wasn't that long. And then that was fine. But then we got 6, and 6 was just another story. That was I think we underestimated how much work it would be.
How many are you at now?
We've got 6 now.
Still at 6.
I think a mistake we made is just similar to what Luke said. We scaled far too quickly. So do you remember we had 2 and we were making, I think 1 month we made 10 grand profit off the 2 apartments we had, because Brighton, is so seasonal for the rent-to-rent business. So June, July, August, you're laughing, but then winter is very, very quiet. So we got 4 more, now we're on 6. We've gone VAT registered, didn't really understand how to handle the VAT. So we're paying 20% of the turnover to the VAT man. But as you know, through rent-to-rent, there's such a high turnover for such a low profit.
You don't claim any VAT. Your biggest expense is rent, and then you can't claim
It's B2C, the model, isn't it? So it's literally unvatable. I don't know if that's the right word. You can't claim VAT through the business. So we're registered on the TOM scheme now, which definitely helps. That's the Tour Operators Margin Scheme, I believe. So you pay 10% on the profit and not the turnover. So that's been a big help for sure.
Yeah. It's lessons of things
lessons.
that we need to learn. Yeah.
All those lessons will help you in your other businesses.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah.
Will help
Definitely.
you. So all that stuff that I've done, because at one point it's a running joke. At my wedding, my best man was like, "Oh, we all know that James is really good at sticking to a job," and everyone laughs because at one point I think I was 30 years old, and I had 34 jobs. I'm just going try.
That's the entrepreneurial, that's literally what it is.
My first job at 13, raking bungs at a golf course. I was like, this is fantastic, and I was always doing little side things around my main job and all that kind of stuff, which is great, and I think it teaches you a lot of experience. But then when you decide, because you hear this term, I'm going all in. Fuck, what does that even mean? I'm going to go all in. But actually, when you do decide that you're going to commit and focus on something, I've seen from experience that when you get rid of the outside noise, you go after that one thing, follow one course until successful, focus, the acronym for it, it does move a lot quicker. We've had it with the agency. I was doing podcasts at the same as I was running a coaching business, and it never really got going with momentum. And now, within a couple of years, we've scaled up, not massively. We've got a team of 5 people. We're just about to start taking on big corporate brands for podcasts. We're about to go to like the next level, but that's only because of that focus that we've had for the last 2 years, but utilising the focus that we've now got based on the lessons we've learned from getting a lot of shit wrong.
I think everyone's guilty of it, aren't they? Sorry.
Yeah.
I think everyone's guilty of it. When you are an entrepreneur, everyone's guilty of trying so many
hard though. That
different
is
things.
Because you do think it. It's just hard to control that, isn't it? That you always think.
I was laughing. I was listening to you do the first episode. I was like, oh my God, I've done the FBA thing.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Here we go, lads.
We mentioned obviously our notes before with all the side hustles and stuff like that. It's like your brain's just constantly thinking. And I had, when I first set up Pure Clothing, I then launched, when I left, I think it went, then Pure Building, then I had Pure Events, and it was all going well.
Advert, Joe?
Yeah, and it was all, they've all got
players for this.
but then, yeah, exactly. And I learned loads from each business, and it's good, and now it helps you, like I was just saying, in your overall things. I don't regret it, but I did spread myself too thinly. And then, to be fair, I didn't lose money on any of them. After COVID, me and Luke, we did like one last event, and then after that we both kind of just packed in the events. Clothing I sold on, and I've kept the building really, but I've tried to launch another like 3-4 businesses on top of that I've gone to launch, then I've not launched, and you learn a few things where you think, actually I don't think it's going to be that
Do your
great.
homework
And
first.
exactly, it's like, but when you think of the idea, the trouble is if people aren't like-minded around you, especially I could ask 100 people around-ish me that majority of my ideas they probably wouldn't agree with or understand or get it, because they're not the same like-minded. So then it's very hard to determine when you're trying to find out if someone says, I don't think that's a good idea. If every idea is not good, then it's too hard for you.
So what you spoke about in a previous episode, the power of having the people around you who actually have had that lived experience.
Exactly.
There's a difference between coaches and mentors, and it sounds like you guys have got a good mixture of both. A coach will tell you what you need to do, and a mentor will show you what they did.
Yeah.
But I think with that mentorship piece, it's brilliant to get someone who's actually done the steps that you need to do and can give you that guidance. Because otherwise, like I say, you'll ask your best mate, you'll ask your mum, you'll ask your dad, you'll ask your sort of group. But if they haven't had that experience, then they can't give you the guidance. I've taken on sort of inadvertently kind of like a chairman role. And when I'm saying we've got 5 staff and a chairman, like, it's all right, mate, you're not running a football club here. But Paul, who you met earlier, who owns this building that we're sat in now, he's a very experienced entrepreneur. Yeah. He had 16 businesses that he's been involved in, 14 of which didn't really do that well, 2 of which did, one of which did all right, and one that absolutely took off like a rocket. Went from 400 grand loss when he took it over, bought the business for £1 with 14 staff, and turned it to doing £26 million with 124 staff in 18 months.
Wow.
That's incredible.
In what industry?
Architecture.
Wow.
Absolutely took it to the moon.
Did he know what was wrong with it going into it then?
So
he looked at it and went,
he had a construction business, and he was like a project manager for these big like posh houses. And the architect's firm, he needed to take it over because they basically had all of his projects ongoing, and it was about to go bankrupt. So he had to buy it to turn it around.
Wow.
He
had no choice. He had to make that happen.
Had no choice.
I suppose that was the pressure that made him do so well. Yeah. That's probably what it was.
All those lessons of the stuff that didn't work out so well in previous jobs and all that kind of stuff. He learned all those
exactly
lessons,
that.
and could sort of take those lessons moving forwards. So I think that, but again, he went all in on that for like 4 years. And that focus and all those lessons were what enabled him to really scale it super, super fast. Because again, looking from the outside in, there's certain. I thought it was brilliant that. How old are you lot actually?
27. Luke, you're bare old.
Yeah, you're
28.
I'm 24.
Okay, so
I'm young.
So you're all in your 20s.
Yeah.
Hearing you guys on the previous episode saying about the danger of like the Instagram generation and that Be Real app where you just show one thing a day and it's like actually focus on real life is so dangerous, I think, especially for your, less so for my age. I'm probably like a half a generation ahead of you guys in terms of age, but I've lived a life before social media, so you weren't always living like a highlights reel of your own existence, if that makes sense. But I think especially in your age group, everyone's looking at all the boys out in Dubai smoking big cigars and drinking and driving Lambos, and popping bottles and looking at Dan Bazarian yachts. I mean, don't get me wrong, hashtag looks like they're living their best life, but that ain't the reality of it. So I think it's really important that people like you guys have these conversations and go, actually, here's what we've got right, here's what we've got wrong, here's the coaches and mentors that we're bringing. Because a lot of people also, that's when I heard you say about that, I was like, it's brilliant that young people are having this conversation. Young people, I sound like my fucking...
Chill out.
Sorry about that. I'm so proud of you boys. But so many people want to either think that they know everything, and they fucking don't, or if they have got support like a coach or a mentor, they don't talk about it. Yeah. They're like pretending like they've made it themselves. No one is self-made.
Exactly. Well, that's
exactly scale. You're not doing it by yourself. It's just that.
We've not really obviously mentioned. I don't know if we did at the start of the thing that obviously we've got you on as a mentor, our mentor for the podcasting. So obviously we met you at the EMC, the CES conference, isn't it? I don't know.
Entrepreneurial Marketing Conference.
There we are. That's the one.
He was paying attention when he was there.
He's going back to Brighton.
Oh, really?
Service accommodation.
Airbnbs.
Airbnbs for days. That's what I'm talking about.
But yeah, so obviously that's where we met you. Heard you did obviously a talk on stage, and we had already spoke. I had spoke a lot. Funny enough, the other day, at the back of my notebook from years ago, where I've got a list of all my goals for business, like personal and helping other people and stuff. One of them is so I've got some huge goals on there. Some of them I had to cross off. It's like I've already ruined that one. But it was like to do podcasts and to so that was been one of my goals anyway for quite a few years. So I said to these boys, I want to do it, but I want to do it properly. I don't want it to be like I just mentioned, some businesses where I'll start, if it works out, it works out. If not, doesn't bother me. I don't care about pride and ego to what other people look at. I know I'm going to learn from it, grow from it, and I'm going to get there eventually with one of my businesses. Mindset has changed slightly now. I'm more focused on just my building company. But anyway, I said I want to start the podcast, and I'm quite passionate about staying consistent, getting good, and doing it for a long time. So I didn't want to rush it. I'd been thinking about it for a while, and I thought I won't do it for another few years, really. But then we listened to you, and I said to Jake, and I think he was sat next to me. He said, "Why don't you just do it now?" I said, "No, I need to wait a few years."
I need to make sure it's
he's like, "No, we'll do it now."
Do it now then.
And then kind of went from there, really. We had spoke about I wanted to do it with these boys as well. It's just good to bring us all together. I think it will benefit every single one of us, and we're always looking out for each other in terms of our businesses and how we can help each other. So, yeah, from listening to you, I think we spoke to, I don't know who we spoke to, one of your guys on the stand.
I can't remember his name. He's a good, nice guy.
Yeah, nice guy. Good salesman, obviously.
Yeah.
Got his commission.
Yeah. That must have been Dan.
Yeah. But
that was Dan, the guy who did the property stuff with. There you go.
Really? Yeah, cool. So then from there, obviously, we reached back out to you and we decided we'd go for it. And yeah, here we are. Second episode, obviously, in your nice new studio.
But that goes to show the power of mentorship. So, for example, you guys knew, and this is, again, is brilliant insights for what I perceive to be a younger generation than me, is knowing you've got a gap in the knowledge, because there's a difference between, there's 4 stages of competency. There's unconsciously incompetent, where you don't know what you don't know. There's consciously incompetent, where you know what you don't know. Then there's consciously competent, you have to think about thinking, and then there's unconsciously competent. So like driving a car, you just change gears, you don't even think about that. That's consciously competent. So it's brilliant, because a lot of people, again, will just try and cobble it together themselves. They can read a blog. This is what I did to launch podcasts, because there wasn't the information out there back in the day, but do it by themselves. But again, the difference between coaching and mentoring, I could give you the playbook, I could give you the free training course that I gave to everyone at EMC. But then
should have just taken that.
The mentor, sorry about that. But then there's a difference between that and then getting somebody to come in and go like, this is what I've done, this is what I know works. Yeah. I'm going to walk you with me through the steps, and that's the difference between coach and mentor. You need different things for different people at different times, for sure.
100%, mate.
Sorry, go on, Sam.
No worries. So I was just going to say, firstly, thank you for everything you've helped us with so far. I just want to tap a little bit more into like your journey as to how you are where you are like right now. So what would you say were the key fundamentals to your success as to where you are today?
I think never giving up, because there's definitely been a few times where I could have done. I mentioned it in brief earlier. So at one point I had a coaching business, and it was the first time I'd ever made any real money, and I was a proper dick with it, to be fair, the first time.
What did you do with it?
I went on 6 holidays in a year. I bought a shit watch. I bought 2 Audis. I've got a bigger house. Like, yeah,
Just blowing it.
Just like, you know, hashtag living his best life.
What was your
Dan
coaching?
Bilzerian. Mindset and business development.
Really?
Yeah. So I launched a podcast, and that podcast, we ended up getting invited to go to South Africa to give a keynote talk. We've never done one with this group of people before. I have to be careful about what I say for legal reasons. But I went to South Africa. We ended up on stage with like the winner of the South African Voice, and it was all very weird. And then when we were in South Africa, people in the UK were like, "Oh, you do keynote talks, do you?" I'm like, yeah, we do. So we did that, and then we just did more and more keynote talks, and we would do events for 150 people at the Mayfair Hotel, and we do like small scale coaching, one-to-one coaching. But that was the first time that I'd ever made any real money. And then I worked out my moral compass with the people I was involved in that business with was swaying for a little while. I was like, this just doesn't feel, you know, that thing of like gut intuition, it just didn't feel right. I was like, saying that's not quite right about this. I couldn't put my finger on it. And then there's some moves that were made, and I was like, do you know what? It's time for me to get out of here. But it was a real tough move, because it was the first time, as I say, had 34 jobs. I'd run 2 or 3 different businesses by this point. And this was the first time. I remember my accountant, I said to him, what have I, because I was moving house. So I need to know what I've made for the estate agent. And he said, oh, you've done, in the last 11 months, you've done 117 grand cash in your bank. And I was like, I am fucking Conor McGregor. Like, so rich. Turns out the VAT man wanted like 14 grand of that back really quickly. So I wasn't Conor McGregor. But that was the first time I'd ever done 6 figures on my own. So actually, I think probably the biggest thing for where I'm at now was keeping going, because that was a real, I did 117 grand on my own. So then, and I didn't need anybody else. I made that money, but the company made the best part of £1 million. So then to come into a company where, you know, in the last couple of years, we've got to a point now we're doing, 250, we're doing probably £250,000, but then I've got 5 salaries as well as my money. There's a real, but I know that I'm scaling something bigger this time. Yeah. So even now, as I'm sitting here right now, I'm in the middle of the journey. Yeah. You know, I did the first corporate pitch yesterday, and then all these like massive brands, like you walk down the high street, you see all these brands, like, oh, could you do this? Could you do that? Could you do the other? I'm like, fucking hell, thank God we're getting here after 2 years.
They getting you to do their podcast, is that what it is?
Yeah.
To help launch and do the back end. And
they heard how good this one was going to go, and then they were like, showing the lads are doing it. It's only one guy we're going to. But again, to sort of on a serious point though, there was a lot of times I was like, this is just a real hard work compared to what this is bringing me in, when I've been used to doing 6 figures on my Jack Jones.
Just touching on that.
Bigger, but I know this is bigger.
Just touching on that. So firstly, congratulations on doing 6 figures by yourself. Like, I don't think I could have ever done that by myself without Luke's help and my team. But what would you say the transition was for you from doing it by yourself to actually implementing a team? Because I think what holds a lot of people back is they've got the mindset and mentality of that staff aren't going to work as hard as they are or be as good at this as they are than I am. Do you get what I'm saying? So what was that transition like for you from going as a one-man band to scaling with a team, and how has it helped your growth?
Biggest difference was knowing that I couldn't do it by myself at the scale that I want to do it. And again, I mentioned Paul earlier in the conversation, but I was, again, the power of being around the sort of wiser people. I came into this building and I sort of saw what Paul had built, and I was like, oh, wow, this is 100,000 square foot, 53 tenants, and turns over like a lot of dough, and it runs on 3 staff. Wow. And it runs pretty much all automation. The whole thing is mad. And
good business model.
Wow, brilliant business model. I was like, fuck this.
How long's he owned this for?
4 or 5 years. 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. No.
And as I say, it works with automation. Pretty much by itself. It's genius. And I was like, this is so clever. And he said, what is it that you actually want to do? I was like, I want to create a podcast agency. He's like, that's fine, but what kind of a podcast agency, and who do you want to serve, and how involved do you want to be? And the more I spoke about them, I was like, I need a team. Yeah. And the biggest thing that was holding me back was that I thought I didn't need anybody. I thought that, and to your point in the question, you know, people who can't do it as well as you, and how do you get over that? That's just a bit of an ego thing. Like Sam, who's going to edit this podcast, he is much better than me at editing audio. Much better. Having
the trust in people, sometimes you just got to give them the trust.
Yeah,
and
100%.
You know, the first time when you're looking over their shoulder, then it might not be great, but if you give them that responsibility, overcoming months and stuff, and if they're a good person and you've recruited them and you think they're a good fit for the culture and of your business, like they're gonna do a good job, and it's going to allow
Sam's
you
a great example again of being the right. So I spoke at an event. I know you guys are looking at sort of doing events and network events further down the line.
Yeah.
And I was speaking at an event, and Sam was in the audience, and he came up to me after. He's like, I think it's brilliant what you're building out, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, cool. Then I advertised a job about 6 weeks later, and he applied. But he was working by himself. He had his own little production company. He did the Vogue podcast for the magazine in the States.
Oh, wow.
So he's done some like big stuff.
CV.
Yeah, really good CV, to the point where I didn't need to see anything else because I'd listened to his work. I was like, it's phenomenal. But my biggest thing was, I was like, but this is going to be a full-time gig in the office, 9 to 5, and we don't make Vogue-esque podcasts. We help business owners and entrepreneurs to explode their brand utilising the power of audio. That's our thing. We don't make narrative storytelling podcasts. We're not going to be doing like a 6-episode series of fucking true crime, all this like beautiful stuff that you like making, soundscapes. That we don't do that. We make podcasts that build brands. That's what we do. And he's like, cool. He said, I'm just bought into your vision. He said, I'd rather be a small piece of a bigger pie than run something by myself. So I know that I haven't got what you've got.
Probably an entrepreneur rather than an entrepreneur.
Exactly that. But I would never have found him if I hadn't got out of my own way with my ego. My first, and again, I'm still on the journey now. We need another 2 or 3 members of staff right now. That will be a pinch of cash flow for a little bit. So you have to reinvest in the business to make that feasible and possible, which we're going to have to do, whether we like or not. But the first employee that I took on board was a PA. Fucking disaster.
Really?
From a big banking background, I wanted to work for a big corporate. She's like, oh, what's your health and safety policy? I was like, don't fucking hurt yourself. And if you do cut yourself, put a plaster on it, I guess. I don't really know. Haha. She didn't find that funny. I was like, okay, fine. So there's a big culture fit that I had to understand. But you grow through what you go through.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's such a big thing for entrepreneurs. They want to be the finished article. I'm not the finished article. You guys aren't. No one's a finished article. Branson's not the finished article.
You never really
Bart's
will get there, will you? It's just constant progression and
100% Kaizen philosophy. Continual, never-ending, tiny incremental improvements that will get you there.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to, I think, in that first instance, step out of your way, implement the time to teach someone, because that was always my biggest issue. I could do something, it's going to take me 10 minutes. I could do most of the stuff. I was a jack of all trades and a master of none, which is good and bad. I was like a slightly shit audio Swiss Army knife. Bad analogy for me, really selling myself here. But I could do everything. And if it was going to take me 10 minutes to do it, or it was going to take me an hour to teach someone, but then they could do it 10 minutes at a time after that, I just wouldn't invest the time into it. Yeah. Really, really short-sighted, which probably came back from a business that made me 6 figures on my own and turned me quick cash. And I just thought that's the way that you make dough. But actually, investing in the longer term is the bigger play here for sure.
You make the big bucks and the.
So they tell me. That's what Joe Todd told me.
We might find out one day.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. If I find out, I'll let you know. Whoever gets there first, tell the others. Yeah.
What is obviously you spoke a bit there about you need to take on a few people and corporate and stuff. But over the next 5-10 years, what is your kind of future plans or your goals? Is it very focused on this agency, or have you got other things in mind, or are you just very
just as agency? So I've got a goal by December 2026. I want to sell the agency to a bigger agency. Just because I've never done it before, and I just think it'd be quite good to do it. I want to sell it for 8 times multiple, and I want to walk away 5 million quid in my pocket. Nice. So I'm really quite focused on what I want to do. Yeah, which I've never had before, because I was like, I just want to do it forever. But like with this, I want to build it to prove I can build something.
Exactly. I'm sort of the same with mine. You need an exit strategy, even if you get there, I think, and you don't take it, if you hit that goal and you came to that December and you could sell it and you had an offer and you said, you know what, 5 years, I think I can 10x this. Yeah. You might decide to stay on, but you know, it's good to have an exit strategy.
What's mad, as soon as I had that goal, within a week, somebody offered to buy into the business.
Really?
And they said, what you know.
A law of attraction.
Law of attraction, 100%. Yeah. But in that instance there, and this was a very well-off VC who's a pal of mine, who's become a really, really good pal. He would have paid. He said, you know, what's the value of the business? I said, I don't know. In all honesty, we've done like less than a year's full trading at that point in time. I was like, one of 2 things is going to happen here. Either I'm going to mug myself off with the price and begrudge you paying it, or I'm going to rip you off and I prefer to have you as my mate. Yeah. So hold fire, and maybe you buy in 2 years' time, or maybe you don't, and we just continue to go out for coffee.
Does he just want to buy in terms of want to be silent because he wants a piece of the pie? Again, that's an entrepreneurial thing, isn't it?
I think it was
See
a bit
someone
of that.
doing well, and it's like, let me give you some money so we can actually trial it out.
But what I was more interested in, again, this comes back to sort of like stepping back from your ego. I was like, I don't just want, because if I had the money, what am I going to do with it, really? Yeah. I'm going to employ a couple of extra people. That's what I'm going to do at the moment. Like back in the day, I'd have been like, oh, buy another shit watch, or like, I'll get a faster Audi, or whatever it may be. But like now I'm like, I'll invest in the people. But really, I'd rather bootstrap it to that point anyway, rather than take on that funding. Because all it's
Yeah.
going to do is let me get a little bit fat and flabby for a bit and not be as
You're too comfortable
lean.
then, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that I like living under a bit of pressure. I like a bit less pressure, but I think, some
Too late
pressure is
now.
good for you. Yeah. There we go.
Oh, good.
Nice. Luke, I think you had a question to
Alright,
ask.
so
don't you?
basically-
Final question.
Final question.
So one question that we ask all our guests on here is, so what would you say is one winning habit that you've got? And what's one winning habit that you maybe haven't got at the moment but want to work on?
Oh, I like it. One winning habit. This is going to be a bit of a weird one, but I think have habits. So I've got 10 things I now rate myself on every
Really?
single day.
Really?
Did I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning? Did I exercise? Did I do Wim Hof breathing? Did I have a cold shower? Did I do some form of mindfulness? Did I take time to connect meaningfully with my wife and kids? Was I positive and outcome focused? Was I focused at core times of work? And there's one more thing. Did I eat clean? If I have
So you
those
got
10
10
areas
habits.
every day,
Winning.
then I'm winning.
You got to
Because
cover all 10
cover
in
all
the day.
10 in a day.
You got
Yeah, and
to
I've
be
literally-
very regimented to cover
But some
all
days,
10.
so this year I've never done it. I've never done all 10. Never done all 10.
That's
in a
all right.
day.
Yeah, you've still got
That's fine.
good
Some days
things
I'll be
to
out
make.
But
as
at least
high
if
as
you do,
90.
even if you've done 5 of those things, that's a
Exactly.
pretty good
So
day.
on my best day, I will do, on my best day ever, I'm doing 10.
Did you decide to do all them at once? Or did you do one and then a couple months later do one?
No,
or-
so I listened to a guy called Rob Deerdeck who's talking about, you guys should check him out, it'd be right up your street. Listen to it on the way back in the car, you'll love it.
Yeah.
That's what I love about like you guys. Like back in the day when I was your age, like we'd been listening to like old school speed garage, and you lot are just like banging podcasts.
Yeah.
Come on,
This
let's
one's
get
a
some
banger.
Jim rolling. Come on, Jim.
Reel up that podcast, Jake.
But yeah, so he was talking about rating different areas of his life because he had a really interesting philosophy. Was instead of everyone wants to be, do, and have more, but they almost want it in the reverse order. They want to have more, then they'll do more,
Yeah,
then they'll become more.
100%.
Oh, when I've done this, then I'll do that.
Then, yeah.
When I do that, then I'll become this. But that's not the way around it works. You have to be more first, then you have to do more, and then you will have more. That's the order it fucking works in. And he worked out that he designed his life and his work fits around his life design, and his family fit around his life design, and his health fits around his life design.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, that's really clever. But he had some like percentage score thing that he did. And I was like, fuck, I ain't got time for that. So I literally I rate myself yes or no. Did I do those things every day? And I find it yes or no gives me no wiggle room. Yeah. Did I get up at 5? Today I did.
It's a yes or no answer, isn't it?
Yes or no. And then you can get to the end of the day and you rate yourself and go, okay, cool. Like yesterday I scored I think it was an 80. Day before I scored a 40. It's my little boy's birthday, so I got up late. I ate fucking cake, didn't train. That's fine for that day because I'm just trying to be optimal when I can be. But then at the end of the week, I can go, cool. I've rated myself overall 67%. Does that line up with how I felt? Actually, it did. I had a good week this week.
Yeah. It's back to being accountable as well. Like what we said, keep yourself accountable. It's okay to have a bad day and whatever else, but it's...
Do you ever find yourself, I'm guilty of this, like as a natural sales guy, I actually sell myself as to why I haven't done something I should have done.
Yes,
So
that's
I
what
set
I
my
do.
alarm
Yeah,
for 6, but I
100%.
wake up at 7. Oh, it's okay because I'll work an extra hour.
That's what
Did you find yourself doing the same?
Because I found before when I was looking at doing it, I was like, how would I do it? Because he rates himself on a percentage on each area. So he's like, oh yeah, I was like, he's an American guy. I'm like a 47% today. I 100%. I'm exactly like you. I'd be like, oh, I didn't train properly. But I did 10k steps. Fucking doing 10k steps up and down to the coffee machine. He's not working out, motherfucker. Did I train? Yes or no? Yes or no.
Straight to
So
the point.
you're only kidding yourself.
Exactly.
It's literally you versus
Exactly.
you.
Yeah. And I think you could be your toughest critic, but you could also be the easiest person to blag. Yeah. So I've just got
Try
rid of
and
that wiggle
justify
room.
things, right,
Just
yeah.
got rid of that wiggle room. So yeah, my one habit would be having a set of habits and abiding by it as much as possible.
Yeah.
I think that's a real good answer, man.
Yeah.
What's the answer
One
to the
habit
second
is
question?
habits.
Yeah.
He's got enough 10. He doesn't need that. I was like, if there's one that you could do that you're currently not doing, what would that be? You've got enough.
Do you know what the thing that I need to work on? I don't know if it's a habit, but I don't have enough patience.
I'm like
really don't have enough patience. And I try really hard. Like when I was a kid, they sent me to anger management and they were like, oh, he's just an angry kid. I'm just fucking in a rush to get shit done.
Yeah.
I think maybe I should have stuck at anger management for a little bit longer because I'm constantly annoyed at stuff. But no, I think the patience thing I'm really struggling with. And that's actually where we're going with the business now. Like I say, when I was in that coaching business, we went from a standing start to about £1 million in turnover in 18 months. I was like, that's how businesses run. So to be in this company and doing about $250,000 after 2 years, based on that previous metric, this is a fail.
Yeah.
This 100% is a fail. But actually, you look at it, we're building something here. we're building something that's got longevity. You know, we've got 4 other people who make their living from the work that we do in this building. Like, it's having a bigger impact. So I just have to be more mindful and patient. And then hopefully the 10 habits that I'm stacking up every day, when I'm doing my mindfulness practice, I have more opportunity to be patient if I actually sit down and fucking do it. That's the one thing I'm not doing enough of is the mindfulness.
I respect that, mate. So the final question I actually have before we wrap this up today is, if you could go back in time and give your 21-year-old self one piece of advice that you could have changed to get to your goal quicker, what would it be and why?
I thought about it so many times. Do you know what? When I was 21, I was a holiday rep working abroad. I still remember my 21st birthday.
Sorry.
Yeah. 21st birthday was the first time I ever had the proper illegal absinthe. Fucking hell, that was a night. But I would tell myself, don't take life too seriously. Because I've always been in a real rush. I'm just rushing to get everywhere. When I was a kid, I used to just run. Didn't even have anything
I do that.
Did you do that as a kid?
No, I'm literally doing it like recently.
doing it.
I still do it. Yeah, I still do it now.
My best mate was called Tom Luffy. He lived on the other side of the village, and it took like 7 minutes to walk there. But I got to a point where I could run it in 90 seconds. Yeah. So I just bombed it to Tom's house. I was like, "Oh, I'm here." Like, to do what? Take a mega drive. Like, then I run home.
I've never done that in my life.
Just even from the door to the car, just run to the car. Because that's about 30 seconds I've saved that day.
Yeah. Bro, were you that kid in school?
Literally run past your house.
I bet you was that kid in school.
So quick, mate.
I bet you used to run down the corridor, like dropping all your books and your hands behind your head.
Oh, that's funny.
So you wouldn't have taken life so seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Even like back in the day, like when I was a holiday rep, like I wanted to be like when we were working in the hotels, like we could be better than we're doing at the moment. And just took everything just a bit too serious. I think there's an element of like slow down, enjoy because everyone says this, right? Enjoy the journey. But most people say that once they've got to somewhere that you can
it's
kind of
hard
think
to
of as a
enjoy
destination.
It's quite hard to enjoy.
Yeah, we could all probably take a
lot of stress.
bit of that
Kids are
with
good
us.
for that. I presume you guys got kids?
No,
yet?
none of us have
Nah,
kids.
fucking living the dream, you lot. Kids will really make you slow down and take stock because the time. Everyone says it like, "Oh, time goes so fast." You got kids. Like my eldest one's now 6, and I'm like, "Where did 6 years go?"
Yeah.
Like I blink. You know, at one point he's like that, and now I can just like barely pick him up. I'm like, wow, and he's like making like Lego boats this morning before he goes to school, and he's like reading the instructions. I'm like, fuck, like that's like a little human. and honestly, if you're not careful, you blink and you've missed all of it because you were too busy trying to get to somewhere.
Yeah.
You know that, and I don't know if you've seen that brilliant meme. There's a skeleton running along chasing money, and then he falls in the grave.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can easily do that if you're not
Careful.
careful. But who am I telling 20-year-olds with no responsibilities?
I like it, mate. I think it's solid advice. I think we all get kind of caught up in, well, I'd say the rat race is not because we're trying to break out of it, but you are kind of still in your own rat race. Like,
Yeah.
we all work more hours now than we did when we worked for someone. Let's not get it twisted. Like, you know, we are putting in
for less
so
money
many hours.
in some instances.
I genuinely think if I stayed in recruitment and I was working the hours I'm working, I'd be nicking like 20 grand a month. You know, I'm not earning anywhere near that in personal business yet. So yeah, I think we should all take some advice from that and just not take it so seriously, right?
100%.
Enjoy the journey, not just the destination.
Easier said than done.
100%.
But yeah, thank you very much for coming on, James.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been good.
Thank you very
Cheers,
much.
Jack. It's been a pleasure,
Cheers,
mate.
fellas.
Cheers.
Thank you.